Let's move on to my next film, which is a film called Causeway, which is directed by Leah Neaber and stars Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry. I'm laughing because I always try to put the pronunciation next to their names. And then for a handful of these in this review, since I was doing so many reviews so back to back, I forgot to. So I do apologize if I got the director's last name wrong, but I can tell you that I got the two stars' names right. So good on me. This film follows Lawrence, who plays a woman named Lynsey, a U.S. soldier who suffers a serious brain injury while serving in Afghanistan, which forces her to return home. Upon her arrival, she struggles to return to daily life. And this film is essentially, it's a tour de force performance for Jennifer Lawrence. That's how this film is pitched. It is a tour de force for, I guess, both of these stars, but in particular Jennifer Lawrence. This is the first time we've really gone to see Lawrence in a true, independent, purely dramatic role since Winter's Bone, which I think was like 2009. And here's what I'll say about this film. So, spoiler alert, I didn't particularly like this film. It's not going to be a particularly positive review for me. What I will say about Causeway is I think Lawrence's performance is very commendable. Ultimately, the issue with it, though, is it just never worked for me. You know, she's supposed to be this character, Lynsey, who's returning home from Afghanistan after suffering a brain injury. And the issue is I just couldn't not see Jennifer Lawrence in it. It really felt like a movie star giving a movie star type performance, even though it's not like a typical, like, even something like Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich. It's not one of those, like, kind of flashy roles. But ultimately, it did feel like a role that was designed to win Jennifer Lawrence acclaim and awards. And it just didn't work for me. And that's the issue of this film. If, like, the main central performance of the film doesn't work for me, the film, to a degree, is just, it's a failure, right? Like, I found her completely miscast in this role. I never particularly bought her as this character. Like I said, I felt like I was watching the movie star Jennifer Lawrence go through the cues of winning an Oscar, if you will say. I think that's probably a pretty cynical way of viewing this film. I think there is probably a lot of artistic integrity within Jennifer Lawrence's performance. It didn't click with me in any meaningful way. So I just found this film to just be, it bored me. Like, just straight up, it was like waiting for, like, okay, where are we going with this? I've seen stories like this. Like, what are we trying to do here? What I will say about the film is, she's not necessarily bad in this film. It does feel like there's something missing from this performance, and I feel like other performers could have brought something interesting. I think also this film might struggle because Jennifer Lawrence is maybe an actress who's better used a little bigger. She's a character, like, in a movie that I did not like last year, Don't Look Up, which featured Jennifer Lawrence. I thought she was really good in this film because it allows the eccentricities of herself as a performer. This film felt like a very stripped down, very naturalistic performance from Lawrence, which, again, when you have such a fun, dynamic performer, having a character that's not particularly eccentric and doesn't get to use some of the more weird, or I don't want to say unnatural, but just some of the more Jennifer Lawrence movie star charm, and they don't let her really do that in this movie. It just didn't feel like a role that she needed to do. And again, I get it. It's a very respectable role for her to do. It just didn't work. I will say the scenes that happened with Brian Tyree Henry in this movie, I thought were wonderful. I thought they did actually have really good chemistry, and they brought out the best in each other as performers. So that element of the film worked for me. So this film is not just a void. It's not just a completely, like, nothing film for me. It's just to say that this film doesn't do much for me. It's not very flashy, which is completely fine. I don't need this film to be flashy, but it's very subtle, and it's a very character-focused drama through and through. And the issue is, if I'm not particularly interested in the actress playing the character in a character drama, it's just a film that wasn't going to particularly work for me. This film might be really emotional, impactful for other people. If you buy into Jennifer Lawrence's performance, I think that's where the line is. If you buy into it, you'll probably like this movie because it's a character study. If you don't buy into the performance, you're probably not going to like this movie because you don't buy into the character study. I ultimately was on the other side. I did not buy into it, thus I didn't love this movie. In fact, it's not a movie I could particularly recommend. I don't think it's a bad film. It's a very short film, which is nice. It's only 90 minutes. It's a very clear, concise, it's a very tight film. in that element of it, I respect. There's a lot of really good performances. Even like I said, if I don't love Jennifer Lawrence in here, I can't deny that it's a particularly bad performance. It's just what I see to be a miscast performance. But she has some really emotional moments with Brian Tyree Henry, and I'll say the last 20 minutes are very impactful emotionally. But ultimately, Causeway is a 2 out of 4 star movie for me. It just wasn't a movie for me. It didn't work for me in any particularly cohesive way. And I don't see this film making much buzz at the Academy Awards this year. So that's my review of Causeway.